Gambia has recorded less than 50 new COVID-19 cases in a day, only for the second time in 7 days. United States Democratic Vice Presidential nominee has received support from Indians for her candidacy. And the Ugandan prisons are reporting more COVID-19 infections as the number of cases increases. Well, this and more coming on The World Today. Hello, this is Africa TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin. I am Amadou Kante. Many thanks for joining us, and now the news in detail. Now, the number of new COVID-19 cases in the Gambia has dropped to less than 50 per day for only second time in 1 week. From August 19 to 26, daily new cases were mainly between 100 and 172. The CC has more details of that in this report.
On Wednesday, the Gambia registered 22 new cases of the coronavirus, taking the total number of confirmed cases to 2,708 since March this year. Those tested positive are men and women between the ages of 9 and 76 years. 3 more people have died from COVID-19, bringing the total number of deaths to 93. A total of 611 people have recovered from the respiratory illness. 17 people have been taken into quarantine and 278 new discharges were made. The Gambia currently has 31 people in quarantine, 2,004 active cases, 220 probable cases, and a crude case fatality ratio of 3.4%. Volunteer doctors have taken it upon themselves to account for positive cases that are self-isolating at home by regularly calling and monitoring their conditions, according to the Ministry of Health. Meanwhile, a 21-day state of emergency ends tonight. It is not clear if this will be extended by the President, Adama Barrow. For iAfrica News, I am Daisy.
And from the report there on the latest situation of the coronavirus in the country, next we head to Mali, because the political unrest in the country has been on for several months. From the March adoption of veteran opposition leader Soumaïla Cissé and disputed parliamentary elections to call for President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta to resign in May, and the July killing of 14 people in clashes between security forces and protesters, and the rejection of a proposed unity government by ECOWAS mediators. Our reporter Fatmata Fati looks at a timeline of the significant events in the troubled West African nation.
On the 17th of August 2020, the opposition declared that it will stage daily protests, culminating in a mass rally in Bamako at the end of that week. A day later, while protests continued, an army mutiny was reported at a military camp in Kati, a few kilometers from the Malian capital Bamako. That mutiny later turned out to be a coup, and President Keïta, his Prime Minister Bouba Cissé, and other top government officials were detained. International condemnations began to trickle in that day, before and after President Keïta was forced to resign. Pro-coup protests were held as hundreds took to a popular street known as Independence Avenue in Bamako, welcoming the army's decision to oust Keïta, and in celebration of their long-time wish for the embattled leader to step down. On August 19, Army Colonel Assimi Goïta declared himself chairman of a 5-man military junta known as the National Committee for the Salvation of the People. International organizations and countries, fearful of a rise in instability in West Africa, condemned the coup and suggested reinstating Keïta and returning Mali to a civilian rule. ECOWAS, which has a dim view on coups, and the AU all closed borders on the landlocked country, disrupting economic activities before sending a delegation to continue early failed talks, this time centered around a transitional agenda. But talks failed again as the ECOWAS delegation, led by Nigeria's Goodluck Jonathan, and the junta members didn't agree on a military-led 3 years proposed transition. But the junta assured that President Keita can leave for medical treatment if he wants. Keita's unpopularity had grown from allegations of corruption and inability to quell jihadist activities in Mali since 2012. For iAfrica TV News, I am Fatmata Fati.
Recent political developments in Mali rounded up there in that report by our very own Fatmata Fati. Now, posters in support of the United States Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris have appeared in her central village in the Indian provincial of Tamil Nadu. Well, several posters with various pictures of Harris and messages of support popped up across the village, expressing local pride and wishing her good luck in her candidacy. Sohna Tunkra reports.
Harris is the first candidate of Indian descent to be on a U.S. presidential podium. Her ancestral village is delightfully celebrating her success in life. Posters of Harris were displayed on almost every street corner at her grandfather P.V. Golpana's village. A local villager says Harris' grandfather hails from Tolesandrapuram, thus the pride is overwhelming.
P.V. Gopalan is from our village, Tolasandrapuram, Angra Haram. Her granddaughter is Kamala Harris. She is contesting in the U.S. elections as vice presidential candidate. She is the granddaughter of a person from our village. So this is the pride of our village, and we are proud of her. Our village is a tiny village, and from this small village, someone has gone very high in life and is contesting in American elections. So to appreciate and welcome that, all villagers, youths and elders of our village put up these posters all over the village.
Kamala hails her Indian descent and usually visits India. She often argues that her identity makes her uniquely suited to fight for the people who have been traditionally ignored.
Only now we know who she is. Before that, we had no idea about her. It is common for anyone to reveal their identity once they become popular. So now her ancestral details are coming out. Her grandfather is native of our village. She is the daughter of our village and is contesting in the vice presidential elections in the US. So even if she hasn't visited our village before and not spoken about her Indian connections, we consider her one among us because of the Indian origin. So we put up posters in our village.
Dwellers are also praying in shrines and houses of worship for the Democratic candidate to succeed in the upcoming U.S. election in November.
If she comes to our village, we will give her a grand welcome. We hope she will come to our village to visit the temple after her victory and after she becomes the vice president. If she believes the victory is because of the Almighty at the Dharmasatha temple, that she will visit the temple to offer her prayers. How popular we are, we should always visit our village and people. So for the pride of our village and people, we hope she will visit this village.
Kamala Devi Harris is an African American who descended from a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She is the first woman of color to stand on a major party's presidential ticket in the U.S. She was nominated by Joe Biden for vice president for the November 2020 elections. For iAfrica TV, Sohna Tunkara.
From Indians ahead of the November presidential elections in the U.S. And from that report there, we come back home because the government of Ireland, through its project in the Gambia, implemented by the UNDP and partners, presents conversations on sexual and gender-based violence. It is meant to identify support to victims for their participation in the process of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. Aisha Tamba has more details of that in this report.
The national coordinator of the Network Against Gender-Based Violence, Fallu Sow, said in the past, speaking against sexual and gender-based violence was a taboo. However, he said with the help of the service providers in the Gambia, statistics have shown huge changes regarding the number of cases reported from 2015 to 2020.
We've realized that there is an increase over the past 5 years in the number of sexual and gender-based violence that are reported. We've recorded over 2,000 cases, to be specific 2,030 cases from 2015 to date. And this year alone we recorded over 72 cases. And of this, most of the cases, around 50% when we calculate it, are sexual violent cases, mostly rape, defilement, and sexually related offenses.
He further said most of the perpetrators of this form of violence are men and boys. Over 95% of the victims are women and girls, and about 75% of the victims are also children below 18 years. So also said the 2,030 cases reported are only a few cases reported around the KMC, Banjul, and CRR. Tabunjai Sar, a Chief Reconciliation Officer at the Truth Reconciliation and Reparations Commission TRRC, said Gambian women need to break the culture of silence, and the only way out for women is to speak up.
Because when you speak out, you're not only saving yourself, but you're saving others. Because if a perpetrator is within the community and sexually abusing, for example, a girl child, and this is brushed under the carpet within the context of the culture of silence that we all grew up with, that person will go on not only molesting others, but everybody within that community who is less privileged, who hasn't got the power to fight back, is also affected.
Madam Sar said at the level of the TRRC, 54 men and women have testified and said they have been sexually abused, and there were many forms of violence. On June 30th, the National Gender-Based Violence Helpline 1313 was unveiled by the First Lady, Fatmata Barrow. Gender activists said not all acts against women are gender-based violence, or that all victims of gender-based violence are female. They said the surrounding circumstances where men are victims of sexual violence could be a man being harassed, beaten, or killed because they do not conform to view of masculinity, which are accepted by the society. Reporting for African News, I am Aissatou Tamba.
And from the report on gender-based violence matters, we would now take a break and come back shortly with the remainder of the story. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back, and you're watching the World Today News Bulletin on iAfrica TV. And now to the rest of the stories. Now, for the past 2 weeks, the public were ordered to stay indoors from 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. as from 10 p.m. rather to 5 a.m. as the government imposed a curfew in its latest efforts to curtail the spread of the coronavirus pandemic in the country. But the latest emergency declared by the government's legislation is set to expire tonight. Details of that in this report. The 21-day state of public emergency and curfew declared by the Gambia government ends tonight after 3 weeks of limited activities in the country. Since the confirmation of the first novel coronavirus in the Gambia in March, President Adama Barrow has declared a series of emergency regulations as part of efforts to contain the spread of the virus in the country. But that did not stop the surge in COVID-19 cases, as the country recorded over 2,000 cases. Also, part of the measures under the new state of emergency ordered all congregational prayers in mosques and churches to be banned as sea, land and air borders remain closed. The markets were asked to operate from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., but that regulation has since been reversed by the authorities. Accordingly, any person who breaches the regulation were said to have committed an offense and liable to a fine of $5,000. Gambia has recently joined African countries with the fastest growing number of COVID-19 cases, according to the World Health Organization. As the number of COVID-19 cases continue to rise, with the country recording 2,780 cases since March, 2,004 people are currently receiving treatment, while 93 people lost their life from the virus, according to the latest report from the health authorities. With the COVID-19 situation in the country still bleak, the public would be anxious to know as to whether the government will extend the emergency regulations. The 21-day state of emergency and curfew declared by the Gambia government ends tonight. Now, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Rafael Mario Grossi, held talks with Iran's nuclear chief, Ali Akbar Salehi, on Tuesday. Tehran has described the talks as a new chapter of cooperation. Ibrahim John tells us more.
Iran's nuclear chief Ali Akbar Salehi has revealed that his country's collaboration with the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) will positively progress. Salehi believed that Grossi's visit will unearth satisfaction to both parties. The Iranian nuclear chief stated that Tehran hopes that the IAEA will be professional and independent in the implementation of their work. The IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi noted that he will disallow anyone to hijack the agency's task in achieving their objectives. According to Grossi, since his appointment as IAEA Director General, there has never been any problem in the Iran-IAEA relation. Iran's arch rival in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, is set to join the race in nuclear production. The International Atomic Energy Agency said they have an agreement with Riyadh, and that allows them to closely monitor the kingdom's nuclear activities. Reporting for iAfrica TV, I am Ibrahim John.
And from the report, as you heard by Ibrahim John, next to Nigeria, because secondary schools in the country have opened halfway to allow graduating students to sit for their final year exam, while school administrators maintain that they are executing all measures to safeguard students and staff from COVID-19. Several learning institutions are offering online lessons across Nigeria, but this has brought some challenges for students. Educational facilities were ordered to close for almost 5 months due to the surging of COVID-19 cases in the country. Details of that in this report.
Wearing of masks, temperature checks and hand washing or sanitizing, all mandatory measures as secondary schools across Nigeria reopen partially. Learning institutions have been forced to close down for over 5 months now due to the coronavirus pandemic. Recently, the government announced only graduating students will return to write their exit examinations. School authorities say they've taken all necessary measures to ensure the safety of students and staff.
Before they resumed, we reached out to their parents. We sent them the requirements, how every child should come with his or her face masks, and then his or her own small bottle of hand sanitizer. And of course, we let them know that we have the items for safety in place.
Even though other students will be here alongside them, but every measures on ground has shown and has made us so confident that our children can come back to school.
While many schools migrated online, poor internet access and electricity supply hampered effective studying, especially in rural areas. Though back in school, students say preparing for their examinations amid the pandemic hasn't been easy.
Emotionally depressing because it just creates a very disturbing image that you won't be writing the exam this year and all your hard work and preparation are in vain.
On a normal school day, social interactions between yourself, your teacher and your fellow colleagues is actually a compulsory thing because school is a social environment. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, where social distancing rules have been enforced and proper sanitary personal hygiene is being enforced, before we could, the cooperation between the students and the teacher had been faltering due to the fact we can't approach our teachers beyond the set limit and communicate effectively as we could.
The majority of Nigeria's students who are not sitting final exams are still stuck at home, and parents are waiting for authorities to announce when classes will resume for these learners.
And from that report in Nigeria, next to Uganda, where more than 100 inmates and a prison staff have tested positive for COVID-19 at a government prison in northern Uganda. The infected inmates have been moved to a medical facility where they are undergoing treatment. The number of inmates contracting the virus is close to half of the 300 cases confirmed on Saturday by the Ugandan Health Ministry. According to the officials, this is the highest number of recorded cases in a single day. However, more than 20 prison staffs are on quarantine. Let's have more details of that in this report.
The large cluster of cases was found through mass testing of inmates at a government prison in northern Uganda. 152 inmates and one staff member were found to be positive for coronavirus. The number is close to half of the 318 confirmed cases reported by the ministry on Saturday. It is the highest number of new infections reported in a single day.
It is possible that a prisoner from a Muru community could have been taken to the prison with infection while asymptomatic. In any case, Amuru district is one of the hotspot districts with a high level of community transmission.
All the confirmed cases from the prison have been transferred to an auxiliary isolation facility where they are being attended to by a medical team. Authorities say 27 prison staff are also under quarantine. The COVID-19 cases may be more pronounced in one correction center in the north of the country, but the worst is feared for several others as prison population continues to surge. According to authorities, the number of inmates has jumped more than 10% since March. There are roughly 64,000 inmates in the system. Medical conditions and food practices have improved, but facilities remain congested.
We continue to get prisoners from the courts. Probably what I would urge is that the judiciary should only send those who should be in prison, not petty offenders. They should send those who are a danger to society. Those are the ones who should be behind bars, especially at this critical time of this pandemic.
Transmission rates are also on the rise outside prison walls. The capital Kampala registered 342 cases last week.
This virus is exploiting every possible means to infect and kill. And it is a virus which asks all of us to obey certain measures to prevent ourselves and the community.
Last month, the government eased some of its lockdown restrictions that have been in place since March. Businesses and public transport are in operation with safety guidelines like wearing masks and keeping social distance being enforced. But with the spike, authorities say a second lockdown is a possibility.
Well, Ugandan prisoners there are also hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and from the report in Kampala, Uganda, we finally brings this news bulletin to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, you can log on our website on africa.tv. But you can also join my colleague Sohna Tunkara at 19:30 GMT or 7:30 local time for the Gambia 24 news bulletin. But for now, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.
Debunking COVID-19 myths.